which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Restore a vote of silence. Thank you very much. Please be seated. And remember to silence your cell phones if you have them. First item is approval of the agenda. I'll move it.
Second.
Second by Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Supervisor Bittinger is out of town. Items 2 through 5 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 2 is approval of the minutes of the September 5th meeting. Item 3 is approval of the claims. Item 4 from the Board of Supervisors submitted by myself and Mr. Radig is approval for the chairman to sign letter to and upon the request of Rocky DeWitt regarding his removal from the LAC authority. Composed this in regards to the questions last week. Karen has a copy for anyone wanting a copy, and it will also be sent directly to Mr. DeWitt. Item 5 from Human Resources includes A, approval of memorandum of personnel transactions, and B, approval of the renewal of the Employee and Family Resources as our employee assistance provider. Any questions on the consent agenda?
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Radig. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Item 6 from Community and Economic Development, Don Norton, for action is approval to allocate $1,000 of gaming revenue and 2 days or 16 hours total of paid time off for the Employee United Way contribution campaign.
Hi, do you guys have any questions? Otherwise, I don't really have a presentation.
It's just something we do.
It's something we've done in lots of previous years. One thing that I would mention is last year we raised about $26,000 as employees, and that was through regular pledges, and also I have a little extra big go or whatever, and that brings in some extra money, so, yeah. But we'd like to increase donations this year, but, so if anybody has any suggestions, I'm open to them.
I'll move item 6.
I'll second.
Motion by Radig, second by Taylor. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0.
Thanks.
Thank you. Item 7 from Human Resources and the Deputy Recorder is an action item to approve an increase to Ron Koch's vacation accrual and change his position title to GIS Analyst.
Hi, Melissa Thomas, Human Resources Director. And today we're seeking the approval to increase Ron Koch's vacation accrual and also change his position title from the GIS, from the mapping technician to the GIS analyst. Now, Mr. Koch, this is an extremely rare occasion today. He has actually worked for us for almost 24 years in the same position. Between the county and the city and also WITCC, we have just bounced him from budget to budget to budget. So he's remained in the same position for quite a long time, and I think Diane has a little bit more background.
Diane Swoboda Peterson, Real Estate Recorder Deputy. Ron's asking for his title to be changed from GIS Technician to GIS Analyst. He's also asking that his vacation accrual be increased to 5 weeks per year as of his anniversary in July of '23. Ron started out in the Recorder's Office in 2000, then he moved to the City Assessor's Office, then he moved to WCICC, and now he's back home with us in the Recorder's Office where he should have always been. All of these moves weren't anything he had to do with. He enjoys his job. He's been there since the beginning of our mapping system, and he's the only person who's ever maintained that system, and it's almost 24 years. He works hard to make our GIS system a positive impact for everybody that uses it, and he does a really great job, and I know because I'm his supervisor. I believe changing his title and his vacation accrual are the right things to do for Ron. Thank you.
Any questions?
So essentially, you're saying if he would have stayed in the same position without having bounced back and forth, this is what he would have otherwise been entitled to?
exactly every time he moved, his seniority started over, and also his accrual rate.
I would move it.
I'll second the motion by Taylor. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 4-0.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Item 8 from 3rd Judicial District Department, Maureen Hanson for information. This is an update on the 3rd District Department of Corrections.
Hi, thank you for giving me an opportunity to provide an update of the business with community corrections in Woodbury County. As of July 1st, the 3rd Judicial District Department of Correctional Services became the Iowa Department of Corrections 3rd District with the realignment bill that was passed. And I just wanted to give you an update on our business and to give you some specific numbers for the county of Woodbury. With the realignment and having one Iowa Department of Corrections system, there are 8 judicial districts, and we are the 3rd district that serves 16 counties in northwest Iowa. There are 9 prisons in Iowa, 1 female prison, and the others are male prisons that are located throughout the state. Currently in the state of Iowa, the population of those on community supervision as of August 31st were 30,498. There are 1,367 in residential facilities in the state of Iowa and 8,307 individuals in prison. In our 3rd Judicial District, we have 2 offices, one in Sheldon that covers the 10 counties in the northern tier of our district, and our office in Sioux City covers the 6 counties in the bottom half of our judicial district. And within our Sioux City office, we have 2 residential facilities, 99 beds total. The north facility has 57 beds that serve individuals that are coming out of prison and sex offenders. And then our south facility has 26 beds, 16 beds are reserved for women, and 26 beds mostly for male probationers and some that are serving their OWI sentence at the facility instead of in prison. The classes that are offered throughout our department at both locations are sex offender treatment programming, anger management, a cognitive-based class called acceptance and commitment therapy, and the Iowa Domestic Abuse Program is facilitated by agencies within our district. We also have specialty courts. We have drug courts for Clay, Dickinson, Plymouth, and Woodbury counties, and we have Veterans Court for Woodbury County. The average time that an individual served on supervision within our district for fiscal year 2023, a client on probation served 20.8 months. A client on parole, so they've been released from prison and are on parole, served 16.7 months. And special sentence, which would cover our sex offenders, served 43.45 months. And then the stats that I have for last fiscal year related to revocations to prison, so this does not include someone who's violated their supervision and maybe did jail time or had their supervision terminated, but they actually went to prison. Probation was 5%, parole 15%, and special sentence 12%. Then I wanted just to provide some specific information for Woodbury County. And the number of people on active supervision within our department for Woodbury County as of September 1st, 23 was 1,099 individuals. 306 on parole, 738 on probation, and 55 on various other statuses. when we get a client that's on supervision, we do a risk and needs assessment for them, and that determines the level of supervision, and the level of supervision determines how often we meet with them and case plan requirements for them, in addition to whatever the court has issued for them to do. We have 186 clients on paper supervision, so they would be low risk, and just, we monitor that they follow through with what the court has ordered them to complete. We make a report to the court and then discharge them. There are 167 on level 1, 268 on level 2, 145 on level 3. Level 3 would be like your normal supervision. You meet with somebody once a month, kind of check in, stay in tune with them, so they're kind of at a moderate risk. And then level 4 can be either a higher risk or new cases, and those were 179. And level 5, which would be our higher risk clients, was 157. And then I also just put together some information related to the Woodbury County convictions that result in supervision somewhere within our department, not necessarily just Woodbury County only. 27 B felonies related to burglary first, drug-related sex offenses, vehicular homicide, and attempted murder. 189 C felonies related to robbery and burglary second, arson second, neglect, sex offenses, and drug-related. D felonies were 567. Burglary third, criminal mischief, weapons, forgery, OWI third, sex offenses, assault, and theft second. There were 65 felony and enhancements related to personal or property underlying charges. 283 aggravated misdemeanors, mostly related to assault, child endangerment, criminal mischief third, OWI second, theft third, credit card. Serious misdemeanors, 362, mostly related to OWI first, assault, criminal mischief, theft fourth, and drug possession. 4 simple misdemeanors, which were all related to domestic assault, and 59 special sentence. So sex offenders that were either on lifetime or 10-year supervision. We've tried really hard to maintain a really good working relationship with both the Sioux City Police Department and the Woodbury County Sheriff's Office. We're excited for the new law enforcement center to be opened up and have been in communication with Sheriff Sheehan about that. We aren't going to be able to walk anymore, and so we're making plans and purchasing additional vehicles so we can continue to do our business out at the law enforcement center. We continue to have WARN meetings with the federal court system and all of the local providers and local law enforcement to meet with clients that are just coming out of prison and to let them know that we're there to help them and the resources that are available. And at the same time, if they're involved in weapons offenses, the federal system takes that to note and keeps those individuals on their radar for prosecution. So we work really hard at just providing services for clients that are on supervision within our department, within the community here, knowing that the realignment has taken, has resulted in a change of our board. It's an advisory board now instead of a governing board, and I felt it's really important for me just to let you know that we are going to continue with our communication, continue our relationship with our stakeholders that we have in the community. If you have questions or concerns, please reach out. We're here to be partners with you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate the update. Any questions? Hearing none. Item 9 from Secondary Roads, County Engineer Mark Nara, includes for action A, approval of contract for propane for heating county buildings for FY 2024.
Good afternoon. Johnson Propane returned the contract for propane for the next year, $1.04 per gallon. We're looking at roughly 56,700 gallons. I recommend approval of the contract.
I'll move it.
Second?
Motion by Nelson, second by Radig. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Item B is approval of resolution to reclassify 1,600 feet of Story Avenue north of 160th Street to Level A service.
About 3 years ago, a family decided to build a house back on the family farm at the end of what's a now dead-end road off of Old Highway 20. They paid to upgrade that road. We restored the ditching so that everything was working properly, crowned the road and added gravel to it. They paid for that upgrade, but it's taken them 3 years to get to where they could build the house. The house is now fully constructed. I'm guessing they might have some interior work, but it should be ready for occupation by winter, which would mean they'd need snow removal service and service beyond what would normally be considered level B. So I recommend that we remove that 1,600 feet of Story Avenue from the level B system.
I'll move 9B to make it A service.
Nice.
Second.
Motion by Radig, second by Nelson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. And item C is to award the pickup truck quote to Barry Ford for $53,372.
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion by Radig, second by Taylor. Hearing no discussion.
If I could,
Yes.
our plan is, we evaluated the trucks by initial purchase price and whether they met spec or not. The Berry truck fully met spec. Because of the disparity in the used vehicle offering and doing some research on market, I think our best bet is once the new truck is delivered to take it out to auction and dispose of it from the fleet in that manner. So we'll be looking at taking bids for it probably in the spring after the new truck's delivered.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. You can stay up there, Mark, for our next item, which is item 10 from myself and the county engineer for action. This is approval of the purchase of upgraded emergency lights for county pickup trucks with gaming funds for $6,080. I recently met with the Secondary Roads Department union. Always refreshing dealing with that union. They are exceptionally kind and decent with me. They invite me out every year to speak with them, and one of the things they highlighted that's kind of on their wish list, but is a safety issue as well, is to upgrade the lights on their trucks that they use, and that's obviously important when they're out in low light areas and a lot of dust and a lot of traffic and at odd
Distracted
hours.
drivers.
Distracted drivers, that's right. So this is something that can be installed by the department. It's just an issue of getting them and really updating all of the trucks with the same high-quality safety measure. So, Mark?
This will add double strobes in the grill and on the tailgates, and then it'll install an improved light bar up on top to replace the old round balls that are up on most of them. We've been making these upgrades on trucks when we buy something new, but the upgrading some of the older ones has taken a little longer. The department recently added over the top strobe and the grill strobes to our 4 semi-tractors, as they'll be in the fleet for a while. Some of the operators had expressed concern about approaching traffic when they're hauling gravel in the gravel road program, just to be able to hit those strobes and give those folks an idea that the truck's about to be dumping and give folks a little bit of warning out there. We took care of that within the department, but this is one that Chairman Ung has proposed to pay out of gaming, which would be a big assistance to our department.
So moved.
I'll second the motion by Taylor. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 4-0.
Thank you. We'll
you.
get them ordered.
Thank you. Item 11 from Board Administration, Dennis Butler. This is approval to reduce the standard reduction from $9,059,000 to $8,809,000, which is a $250,000 reduction, as the authority is not constructing a maintenance building at the new LAC facility. I know Mr. Taylor's been involved in this as well, so if either of you want to start off, that's fine.
Can I just correct one word, is deduction instead of reduction?
Yes, thank you.
Correct. Okay, here, they did have a LEC authority meeting today. There was no action taken, it's informational. Mark can fill it in here second, and I think they'll make the, action will be October 10th at the next authority meeting, so I would suggest that we defer this until October 10th, until we know for sure if they are or are not gonna build a building.
And just to follow up, if that's okay, that I want to have as much transparency as we know. And so as we learn things, just reiterate for those who were not tuned in last time, I spoke to the project manager from the Baker Group, Shane Albrecht, and he assured me that there would not be a building that would be built. And he quote said, if it's not going to be long-term, they don't want to do it. So I just want to make sure that that is stated publicly and that the project manager has said that there will not be a building. And yet Woodbury County taxpayers have dedicated $250,000 to a building that we do not know is going to be built. And so unless there's an up or down vote on that, if we don't hear anything further, I'm going to continue to put this item on the agenda and ask for a vote. If there's information from Supervisor Nelson that there may be a possibility that there's a building that could be voted on, we're willing to, I know you went to your newly minted first LEC authority meeting today, and we weren't there, so I'm willing to take any and all information that may say otherwise.
Thanks, Jeremy. So it was discussed today at the LEC meeting was that 250 is earmarked specifically for that building services building, so it cannot be used on any other portion of the jail unless the LEC authority were to take it out by a vote and then maybe move it around somewhere else. We discussed that we believe that we can get more competitive bids for a building other than with Goldberg and Hausman, who are the contractors and the architect for the LEC currently. And as Dennis Butler stated, today was just a discussion item. It was not an action item. We'll have it on the next agenda to decide if we want to pull that out of their contract, but still earmark it for a building to then build it out, to bid it out to other contractors to put that shed in. And that's kind of how we left it today.
But you're saying they can't on their own move that money to any other line item? Is
Correct.
that- Okay,
Correct.
I
Yep.
just want to make sure that I,
Yep.
so you would anticipate October 10th, they would maybe reverse course on what Shane had characterized as
Yeah.
we're not going to do it if it's not going to be what they were looking for. It's
Sure.
kind of changed courses to, we want to make it more competitive, which is fine. I would applaud that. I would like ultimately to see a building out there.
Yeah,
Um,
same.
So that's the goal.
Yeah, so speaking for, just myself, not for Dan or Ron, but I would like to see a building out there. I think if we're just going to look at a pole structure, we have lots of contractors locally that are building pole structures that could do it far more competitively than Houseman or Goldberg could design for us. And we can maybe even get a larger building than what they're anticipating. And so I think that is the wise choice to try to do that. And I think Dan and Ron are open to a building for Kenny. I think it would simplify his life and maximize his work hours out there. And so, speaking for me, I will be pushing to try to have a building out there.
So,
Were you just convincing, or was there a change of reasoning from before?
No, I think Shane misinterpreted a little bit what we said when they brought that agenda item forward. Was that a month ago when they had the big building, the $500,000 that they wanted us to spend. We had talked about bidding it out at that time to a pole to a pole building contractor. And I think he had wires crossed that was kind of the tune of the board, that we wanted to do that. And since the money couldn't be spent anywhere else, there was really not a need to touch it because it can't be used for anything else. So, but I think at a minimum, I think there was some disappointment that the building wasn't gonna look like the LEC, that it would look like a separate standalone building, but at the same time, we have financial constraints that we can't just build whatever we want. So, I mean, that's the truth of the matter. So,
So you would anticipate at the October 10th meeting, there would be a yay or a nay?
an action item of some kind, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't know that I need to go to October 10th because I don't understand why we would have a building services building and have it bid out and done by the LEC authority. It's a county building. Why would we not bid it out, control the funds, and do the process for it? So, to me, there's no point in waiting to see what the LEC authority wants to do as far as building this maintenance building for Kenny. Kenny's our employee, not the LEC's employee.
Correct.
Building services is our department, not under the LEC budget. So it would make more sense to me that we would find either competitive quotes or an engineer to design and put together a bid package. So that's my personal feeling.
The only issue with that is that the land itself is owned by the authority, so the county wouldn't have the ability to put the building out there, even if it has the joint purpose of servicing the jail and helping out building services, unless there's some sort of agreement with the authority.
Like an amended lease of some kind.
Amended lease or a deed to the actual land underneath. But I think that's where some sort of action from the authority would come in before we know exactly what the step is at the supervisor's level.
So I guess I would, in lieu of that, I would agree with you. If we could do it, I'd like to do it and just, pull it back and do it on our own, because it seems like that's an easier and more efficient process. But given that constraint, I would move to table the item until October 10th. But I would like to see specifically on the October 10th meeting for the Board of Supervisors to deduct $250,000 if they are not going forward with a building. Because if it can't be used anywhere else, well, it could certainly be used for our taxpayers if it's going to nothing.
Agreeable.
I'll second the motion. By Taylor to defer until October 10th. Hearing no other discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Item 12, yes.
Before we move on to that, Mr. Chair, I was wondering if we can receive into the record the Law Enforcement Center project financial recap summary. Is that appropriate to do? Or is that something you'd like to wait until committee board concerns or something otherwise?
Since there might be some opinion on it, maybe we should wait
Okay,
till board concerns.
sounds good.
Item 12 for information is a Summit Carbon Solutions project update with Kaylee Langrel.
From the meeting, I was supposed to say more.
Good afternoon/evening. I'm just here again to give you guys an update on the project, hopefully give you guys some new information as well. I do have a couple things to pass out, if that's okay. Okay, so you guys may have heard me talk about this before, but kind of how I've been doing things is on a semi-quarterly basis, we have kind of a theme that we go through with when I come to and give these presentations to the County Board of Supervisors. A lot of it has been focused around safety. Some of it's been just common misconceptions regarding the project. This quarter, we're talking about emergency preparedness and emergency response. Obviously, that ties into safety. You guys may have gotten an invite to one of our safety open houses. That's kind of where this information comes from. So it has been available to the public. We did hold a couple of open houses in Iowa where, landowners, county officials could come in and hear this information. And now we're just taking it directly to the counties. So some of it I know you have probably heard before, and right now I'm just focusing on this specific page. We've also provided our draft outline for our emergency response plan. This will be worked through with each county individually with our operations staff. I can't speak a whole lot to this because, again, it's an outline, but I will go through this page with you guys. And, I don't want to repeat a lot of information I know you've heard, but really what we're trying to do with this is make the public aware of what CO2 is. By this point, you guys know what CO2 is and the dangers of CO2, but we want to make sure as a company that we're coming out and talking about those things. So, if there is in the unlikely event that there is a rupture in the pipeline, what you may see is a white vapor cloud, an area of frozen ground in the summer, bubbling pools of water, and you may hear a sound of depressuring, a loud hissing, whistling sound. And then the bigger topic that I think has been talked about a lot recently is dispersion modeling. That's something actually that was being talked about today during our IUB hearings. I don't know if you got a chance to listen to that, but there's some pretty good information in those hearings. But as far as dispersion modeling, PHMSA does require us to model high consequence areas along the pipeline route. So a high consequence area would be a densely populated area, commercially navigable waterway, and environmentally sensitive areas. We don't cross a whole lot of those in Iowa. In fact, we only cross less than 2 miles of high consequence areas in Iowa. So we've taken the conservative approach of modeling the entire pipeline route. And that enables us to give emergency responders and work with them on a tactical response plan so that they know what the modeling looks like across the entire route, mile to mile, and they'll be prepared for a worst case scenario. And just talking a little bit more about what dispersion modeling is, the things that we look at while we're doing the dispersion modeling, the topography, weather conditions, size of release. So we're looking at all different kinds of scenarios. For example, if it's a winter day with a southwest wind of 20 miles per hour, say, we're gonna know, we're gonna have a model for that. And the emergency responders, as well as our operations staff, will know where that CO2 is gonna go, and we'll be able to respond to it effectively. Flipping over to this back side here, leak detection and prevention measures. I think this is something, we've talked about a little bit, but we will have a 24/7 control room in Ames, Iowa, where our project is based. This will be manned at all times, holidays, everything. So if there's any kind of temperature or pressure release, we will know immediately. A notification would be sent to our control room, as well as the valves would begin to shut instantaneously. And then the next section here, where we're kind of talking about the different phases. So right now, just looking ahead a little bit, right now we're in the planning and permitting phase. So we're trying to get the state permits. Once we have those permits, we're going to be reaching back out to the county emergency managers, working on setting up scheduling for those trainings and talking a little bit more in depth about what equipment is going to be needed to respond to any kind of rupture in the pipeline. Rod Dillon, our Director of Regulatory Compliance, he's already had a lot of these conversations and has a list really of equipment that's needed, but we'll just kind of fine tune that and make sure that we get each county those materials. And then prior to operations, we'll do our tabletop exercises. Like I said, we'll be utilizing the dispersion modeling to train and do those exercises with the county emergency response. Obviously, we know a lot of fire departments in the rural areas are volunteer. So we will compensate them. That's something that we have committed to doing. And then also, when it comes to operations, we'll have ongoing efforts. So PHMSA requires us to do trainings on an annual basis. We have committed to doing them every 6 months or when requested by the county. And that's something that our Director of Regulatory Compliance is very set on, so we'll be doing that on a 6-month basis. And then when it comes to managing safety, this is just kind of a visual of what we, visual cycle of what we plan to follow. So we'll have our risk management plan, we'll execute that plan, and then we'll check it through annual audits and effectiveness evaluations, taking feedback from the county, and then we would implement that and start the cycle over again. The idea is that it's continuously improving and that we're working within the community to be as effective as possible. So feel free to stop me if you have any questions, but that's all I have for that sheet. I did want to give you guys some general updates on the project. So you guys are probably well aware our IUB hearings started on August 22nd. We're in the middle of those right now. There's really no timeline on when it will be finished. They have to get through all the witnesses, and it's going to take a while, I think. When it comes to acquisition in the county, we are at almost 70% of easement miles acquired. In the state, we are at 74% acquired. And in the county, that's around $3.6 million spent on easement payments. In the state, it's $155 million. At this point, all of our road crossing and temporary driveway applications have been sent into the county. You know, I know a lot of counties are waiting for IUB approval, and we understand that and respect that. So, but just want to keep you guys up to date there. Another thing probably need to address, the North Dakota decision. That's an update. You know, the PSC did deny our permit in the state of North Dakota. I'm not sure if it's technically a reapplication. I think really we addressed their concerns and resubmitted with those concerns addressed. And we should have an answer. I think we submitted that on August 18th, and we should have an answer within 30 days of that. So that's coming up pretty soon, so we'll know what's going to happen there. As far as South Dakota, I don't have a whole lot of talking points on that because that was just yesterday. I'm sure you guys are aware of that as well. But we will plan to reapply there too.
Mr. Taylor.
Thank you very much. Just 2 questions. So what repercussions does that have for you if unsuccessful in the Dakotas?
So
as far as how this plays in Iowa and Woodbury County, the largest county in the state.
So as far as each state has vastly different, well, they're similar but different permitting processes and different conditions that you have to meet in order to get your state permit. I am definitely not the most well-versed in that, but I do know that, you know, one shouldn't affect the other. However, we all know that the purpose of the project is to sequester the carbon in North Dakota. So that's going to be very important that we get the permit in North Dakota.
So if there's no North Dakota, South Dakota, is there in Iowa?
That's, you know, if we don't have a sequestration site, then I would say probably not. But it's not, as far as the permitting process, I can't speculate on how the board is going to make their decision.
And then, thank you for that. And then my follow-up question is, you mentioned the 70 and 74% just as interested in the 26 and the 30%. Let's call them involuntary easements. Do you know the number of people right now in Woodbury County or across the state that don't want the carbon pipeline, that don't want to see the IUB grant eminent domain and force their land on something that they don't want and lose their private property rights? Do you know that number?
So I don't know, our negotiations are ongoing, and I can't tell you how many of those people are just saying absolutely no to the pipeline or absolutely no to this route as it is right now, or I still need some things worked out in this easement. I know in the IUB hearings, there were a lot of people that testified, Exhibit H landowners, that testified and had route recommendations, and I know that we have made attempts to go back to them and work on those things. So to answer your question, no, I don't know.
That would be something that if that information is available to us, I think we would want to know how many of our residents are facing involuntary easements. And I appreciate your professionalism, but with the same tone and tenor, God bless the Dakotas in some ways. And I think the IUB, I hope, looks to them for some of the freedom that they have over there. Thank you.
In regards to North Dakota, I think you guys, as far as I understand, you have two problems up there. One, obviously, with the permitting, but the other is that you have not been able to attain easements from neighboring landowners around the sequestration site where the carbon would leach through the soil into their property.
That I have heard that is, from what I understand, not true. We are, as far as the sequestration site, we're above 90% acquired. So, and that permit, I'm not an expert in how all of the sequestration permitting is. I know it has its own permit process, and we have that already. All we have to do is acquire that land, and it is above 90% acquired, and it's over 100,000 acres. So
Around the sequestration site, you're 90%
Yes.
easement. Okay, thank you. On some of the safety stuff, you talked about the volunteer fire departments. We have 12 of them in Woodbury County. My brother proudly serves on one. You said that you're going to compensate them for some of the equipment. Is that at 100%?
yes, absolutely, we are. If it is, so all of these conversations are going to be between our Director of Regulatory Compliance and his team and the emergency response in those, in the county and those different areas. They will come to a decision together on what they need, and Summit Carbon Solutions will pay for that. But like I said, it's going to be an agreement between our staff and the county staff. And, that's the same for if people are having to take off work for the trainings, they will be compensated for that as well.
Okay, that was my next question, was on the training. Thank you for that. Watching some of the IUB hearings, I've heard from a number of different landowners, not only here in Woodbury County, but neighboring counties and across the state, that the size of the pipe has changed several times in conversations. So what size pipe are you looking to run in at least Woodbury County?
So Woodbury County, the map, 12 inches
12 inch.
is where we're at. It has changed once. And that was, due to the interest, what the idea is, if the project goes through, the other ethanol plants can sign on. So we wanted to make sure that we didn't have to go in later on and upsize the pipe. So we wanted to make sure we have enough capacity right now. And yeah, that's where I'll leave it, because that's where my knowledge kind of ends.
Okay, so speaking of the ethanol plants, several of the witnesses on the landowner side during the IUB process have called for the CEOs of some of these methanol companies to come and testify. I know that you guys are adamantly against that. Why would you be against a value-added company that would have large infrastructure projects in the state of Iowa and bring hundreds of jobs? Why would you be against them speaking on the alternatives of carbon sequestration?
The only thing I can do, or the only thing I can say on that, because I don't know the reason, but I would assume it's because the IUB hearing is specifically for this. It's for our pipeline. It doesn't have anything to do with methanol. What I can say regarding methanol, because I've heard a lot of talk about this recently, I was in Wright County probably 2 months ago. We had representatives from Cornell P there with us, and one of the, I think it was the auditor, asked, have you not looked into methanol? And they said, yes, we have, but what it would require, it's very energy intensive, and it has to be green energy. So it would require them, I think, over 100 new windmills to power that one methanol plant. And so, you know, at the end of the day, the methanol companies have to partner with the ethanol plants just like we have. They have to make that decision, and that's, at least with the ethanol plants that we've signed on to, that's not the decision that they made. But I can tell you that a lot of them have looked into it.
Now, conversation we've had with ethanol plants, so many of them were not aware that methanol was an option. But back to the IUB, you know, your guys' argument in front of the IUB is that you will bring economic prosperity to Iowa through this project, and that the pipeline is the only way that ethanol plants can do that, which methanol would clearly be another alternative. So I think that's exactly why people are demanding that they hear from those folks, and I think that that would be a transparent way to go about that. My last question for you is, how many stakeholders are in Summit Carbon LLC?
Well, I guess I
Or how many investors?
I don't know the number. There's a
Several
lot of,
hundred?
there's private investors, you know, that's way above me. I'm not sure, I'm sorry, I can't answer
Are there
that.
any foreign governments?
Governments, I mean, I know, I wouldn't say governments, no, but I think everybody's
So
aware.
there's no foreign governments that are invested in Summit Carbon?
Not that I am aware of that are directly invested, but what I'm getting at is, so we all know of the SK investor. That is a South Korean. I don't believe it's the government. I could be wrong. But that is a South Korean investor that we have. So just to be perfectly clear on that.
Because it's rumored that there are several hundred investors, and when you guys are looking to get in cash roughly $1.2 billion a year in federal subsidies, I think it's very concerning for the taxpayer that this goes on for decades and we have no idea who's actually getting this money. And so I would, if at all possible, I would love to see a list of Summit's investors.
The only ones that we can give out are the ones that have given us permission to say that they've invested. You know, private investors don't always want their name to be public. So that's not us holding back that information and saying we don't want you to have it. It's just, it's kind of in the business deal there. But I understand. I see where you're coming from. I've heard that.
I just find it interesting that we've got an entire database where you can look up anybody who got PPP money from the government, and we're going to dish out billions of dollars to your organization potentially, and we have no idea who they are. To me, it's the same. So I think the taxpayers deserve better. But nothing we can change here. That's all my questions.
All right.
More?
Well, I appreciate you guys for having me. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you. I'll move to receive the presentation of the record.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Item 13, reports on committee meetings. WCICC meeting scheduled for this Wednesday. Karen, if you want to update the calendar, is postponed until the following Wednesday, same time, due to a lack of quorum. Any other updates from you guys? Yes.
So we had a meeting last night in Mobile regarding the solar potentials for large-scale utility solar in Woodbury County. I was very pleased. There were around 40 people. I thought planning and zoning, there were 4 of the 5 members, mostly in listening mode, and that's why I went. And so heard from about equal representation on either side, maybe 6 to 8. Some of the pros that were shared, it'd be an energy replacement of the Neal plant and about a 2,500 acre site just above what the Neal plant could produce, that there's oftentimes vegetative screening, security measures. We did get an example of a brother-in-law, I believe, who's in an adjacent county. So toward our discussion of absentee landowners, you know, well, if I'm part share of that parcel, does that disqualify? And then the tax revenue, that would be about 5.3 times what current ag land is. That was sort of on the pro side. Some of the nays were, of course, on taking out productive ag land, health concerns, the land and longevity, wildlife, sort of the eyesore argument. So what I'm trying to do and what I was trying to do last night is just be a listener. And what I'm trying to do today is just be no more than a conduit of information back. If this is what the meeting was about. One thing that I think is also important is that one farmer shared that the CSR values that we've looked at, his CSR 1, and Mark probably knows more about this than us city kids, but the CSR 1 went from 49 to the CSR 2 when that came out, went to about 81. And so whatever CSR rating, corn suitability rating we're using, that may determine, and some, I think, in talking to people, feel like that was an overswing at how greatly their land was valued. So those are considerations going forward. Planning and zoning didn't have a lot of response back. And so Dan Priestley, I want to compliment, and Don Narton did a great job. They read our August 8th meeting to sort of give some of the direction. I thought everyone was respectful, and I think it was a good meeting. There will be another one, of course, September, or in about a month. I forget the date, but more to follow. So I hope that was a fair summation of what happened.
Simcoe's MPO board, we adjusted urban area boundaries for the states, and then we did some tip amendments for the Les Hills Scenic Trail project. So that kind of got adjusted and moved around. That's all.
I was not at the zoning meeting last night, so I appreciate you being there. I was down in Anthon at their city council meeting. They put me on the agenda, wanted to come down there, and it was good. It was good to get out there. They talked about the Little Sioux River with the kayak and canoe designation. Keith, I know you were talking about that after a meeting here a couple weeks ago. They're excited about that, and there's an outfit in Anthon that actually you can rent kayaks, you can rent canoes, and he'll drop you off and do that kind of stuff. But there were some citizens that were there that said, maybe we need to do something with our waterfront here in Anthon to help facilitate some of these folks. They talked about, can we get some funding to put mile markers in on the river, so then if people are kayaking, they know how far they are from Anthon, or heaven forbid, if there's an emergency, they could tell emergency responders, roughly where they're at. They've got
that comes
Anthon.
into play when they do the
Okay, and they weren't sure, and I told them I didn't know either. So I thought it was great they were talking about it. They put in a nice boat ramp there for exactly that in Anthon several years ago at their park, and so it was great to see that community. And they kind of had an offshoot wild idea that they'd love to see a walking trail go from Anthon up to Little Sioux Park, and then it would link in with the one that goes into Correctionville. Maybe just a pipe dream, but I think it's great when citizens are dreaming and have big goals. And so anyway, it was a great meeting, but other than that, that's all I had.
You had another meeting today?
Well, I kind of talked about that. But yeah, we had a LEC meeting this afternoon. We had a letter here that Shane Albrecht from Baker Group read aloud to the room, and I'm sure it'll be on the news tonight, but it was authority update from Houseman Construction. Essentially, the fire dampening system is going to add substantial work to the project, and it's going to elongate how much time they need to work on it. They are thinking that a new substantial completion date would be somewhere around the 9th of April, 2024. Now, this is not set in stone. Goldberg Group will get together and they'll look over what Houseman has submitted, and they'll start to kind of jockey back and forth. Goldberg will say, no, hypothetically, no, we think this can be done in January by then, and they'll start to do the dance. So we'll just have to see how this plays out. We should know the timeline given on this is that around October 10th we should have a better idea, which is when the next LEC board meeting will be. or the next LEC Authority meeting will be. So that was unfortunately not the news that we wanted to hear in any regard. But that is the news nonetheless. There were not any change orders or anything like that today, so.
Is that ordering and installation issue was that the sole reason for the delay, or were there other issues that we should
Yes,
be
I
aware
asked
of?
that. So it is the sole reason. They cannot proceed with ceiling work, paint work, wall work, because the fire dampening is within the walls, within the ceilings, and so they have to get that done before they can continue on. I think Shane said it was a domino effect, essentially, that they have to get this one first and then can move on. They can't work around it and come back to it.
Was there discussion of approximately how much time it would take to complete the work after this issue is resolved?
No, so what they said was that by that April 9th, that they didn't think there would be much of a punch list or anything, that there would actually maybe even be prisoners in there by then. Their focus is to get the jail done, and that the jail would be completed sooner, and then they would work on the sheriff's offices and the court offices. So no, they were thinking that there could be prisoners already in there by April 9th.
Can you talk about what you know in terms of the delivery of furniture that was on order and had to come one way or another, where that's being stored and what the cost is to Woodbury County? And then I want to follow up to ask where that money's coming from.
I talked with Kenny Smits last week, Building Services Director. He had lined up the furniture to be delivered October 15th. Obviously, the furniture cannot go in there October 15th. He has found a climate-controlled storage building that the furniture will be unloaded in, and it will be stored there. I believe he has currently secured that location for 4 months for $10,000. I cannot remember if he said it was coming out of his budget or not, so that's where I will stop. And I don't know if he said anything to Dennis or not.
This is the first I've heard of the $10,000, but because that's our our furniture and equipment, we're gonna be responsible for storing it somewhere, but this could be part of the recovery cost potentially from the LEC.
Can you follow up? I'd like to know where that money comes from.
Yep.
Thank you. Can we receive, Mr. Chair, the letter into our record as well as the updated law enforcement center budget?
Yeah, I'll move to receive both documents.
Second.
Second by Raddick. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0.
If I may, this number is revised if anyone's following along.
Were you done, Mr. Nelson?
If there wasn't any other questions, I'm done. Yeah.
So the funds available for completion of the LEC project right now, there was an adjustment that was made. And so $727,683
Correct.
is a new working total.
Which would include the contingency that they have set aside. This is all that's left of the project.
Right. And so if the board so chose to do something with $250,000 later, it would come off of that. And so right now, pending any change orders, that's the dollars that are left, correct?
Correct. They had no claims today, by the way, either.
Correct.
Terrible news.
It is, because it puts us in a financial crunch.
So talk about that if you would. What's the financial crunch? What's the loss of revenue? Let's pretend that April is a real date of 2024.
I kind of defer a little bit to Mark because I don't know how much I can say on numbers because of potential litigation. I think I can say what the potential loss would be to Woodbury County by now.
Yeah, that's all I want to know.
Well,
Or we wanna
potential
know.
loss right now is 1.2 million in prisoner care that we did budget for debt service relief. If that money doesn't come across, then I have to go to general basic fund, use reserves until we can recoup the 1.2 million somehow. And our reserves have been used up a little bit already through this current year budget. The second item is, we've hired 15 jailers, 3 staff, and potentially 3 more maintenance people that we plan on having on duty September 15th. So that now is up in the air because we have these people on hand. You can't just say, go home for 4 or 5 or 6 months. So we have these people here on hand, so there's potential there. They're all budgeted. It's just a matter of,
There's no revenue paying for what we had predicated their hiring on, essentially.
right. If we had known they weren't gonna be the April 4th, we might not have had to hire for another 8 months. We hired them early with the potential of opening the facility. Now, we aren't, so they're gonna be sitting there. Now, Tony may have some comments on that, because I'm sure they're doing something. But again, these 15 for the additional prisoners.
So I think the question, well, is what are the newly or recently hired jailers? What are we doing in the interim, which we realize that they're not gonna be let go and rehired?
Well, we're cutting down on our overtime. We got people actually there now. And we still have, I'm gonna say 8, I may be wrong, that are in training. So they don't count until they get out of training, which will be, we were thinking of a September date, mid-September date. They'll be finishing up here soon. They're working, we're using them. They're helping in transport, they're helping in other sections of the jail doing stuff that we haven't been able to touch because we haven't had time. We're getting things ready for the move, procuring items and stuff like that, but we're just waiting to be told to move into the new place.
Good.
And then last question, have you been granted access to the law enforcement center site? As I would hope you would be, and to be the first supervisor who's allowed out there?
So we did discuss that today. There's a 10-hour OSHA training that they want done, and then a safety video by Hausman, and they said they were gonna work on streamlining that for me and making it easy to try to get that done and get me out there as soon as possible.
Keep us informed if you would. I'd be curious if you do cross those hurdles, as some others have, that you're allowed out there, so.
On this topic, I want to note one piece of context, which I think is important. In August, the sheriff's office secured some very good news for the county, and that is an upgraded intergovernmental agreement for the housing of these inmates. And that news was delivered to the board recently. I can't believe that they're especially happy that the publicly communicated date is now shifted several months, 2 days out from the originally communicated date. This is one reason I wanted this issue to be brought up a couple weeks ago, and the board faced some flack for it. I got some flack for it. And to answer the question everyone may have is, why didn't I just wait 2 weeks? Well, one reason is because I want the public to be abundantly aware that the board did not know. And we made that clear by asking all these questions a couple weeks ago. And I want the U.S. Marshals to know that the board did not know, and we are not trying to string anyone along by trying to earnestly secure in good faith this agreement that should be extremely good news for the taxpayers. And one of the reasons we pursued the bond issue route and the authority route in the first place was to have an LEC that is paid not exclusively by Woodbury County taxpayers. And so I don't want that lost on anyone, and I want it to be clear, the line of demarcation about the county. This is why we're asking for information. We don't want to give, and this is indicative of what I mentioned earlier, we don't want to give false information or false hope or false hires, allocate funds we don't need to, spend dollars to house furniture we shouldn't have to. All these things the county wanted to avoid and did our best to do so. So we're in this together because we have to be, but the county has certainly, I believe, drawn a clear line of where its roles and responsibilities are. Any other committee meeting reports? Item 14, any citizen concerns?
Leo Yoakum, Salix, Iowa. Going past where the new interchange is coming in, south of Sergeant Bluff, I see where there's a little bit of activity down there. And I really haven't seen any plans, but is there plans for railroad access going under the interstate or over it, so it doesn't have to go through Sergeant Bluff? I just thought about that a couple weeks ago when I saw that. It would be a good plus if we could get that in there also. Think about that.
To answer a question without deliberating, just answering a question, there's no plans that I know of or that the county has. I can speak on a rail spur that was built in the city of Sioux City to go to the Six Flags, or I don't remember the name of the golf course that the city had purchased, and 27 flag. I was 21 flags short. Anyway, they spent, I want to say, roughly $5 million for just a small rail spur there. So, and that was dollars 15 years ago. So, unless there was some kind of major development promised and federal funds involved, I just don't see us having the ability to do that.
Any other citizen concerns?
Deb Main, 1026 Charles Avenue, back to all things pipeline. It's been a busy couple weeks, and that started with the North Dakota Public Service Commission denying Summit's permit application, and there were probably 5 or 6 things that, for reasoning that they gave for that. One of them being routing too close to Bismarck. The company applied for a reconsideration, not a new permit. That reconsideration will be decided on the 17th of September. In the meantime, Oliver County denied 2 well injection permits, at which point, before that meeting, Summit withdrew their sequestration permit prior to that meeting. The Mercer County conditional use permit will be decided on September 29th. In the meantime, South Dakota Public Utilities Commission, they denied Navigator's permit first. Friday, there was a motion before that board to not hear Summit's permit, and on Monday, the motion passed 3-0 not to hear that motion. And the basis for that was because they would not honor the county ordinances and specifically setback ordinances. So they are giving the information and the stamp of approval that county ordinances do hold weight and do govern the siting of pipelines in relation to safety of their citizens. So there are 2 other concerns now that have come to light. There are new LLCs being created to ask for water permits. So right now there are 12 of them, and these are registered in the state of Delaware. They're Delaware entities. The format for the names are the city names, SCS, Capture, LLC. So for instance, the Lawler, which is one of the cities in Iowa, SCS Capture LLC requested, and they got a permit to withdraw 55 million gallons of water per year. Another one wants 26 million, and I think probably the other ones will be pretty much along that line also. Another concern of mine is electricity. Today in the IUB hearing, the statement was made that there need to be upgrades to substations, transmission power lines, distribution power lines. Now Summit will pay contribution in aid, and I don't know exactly what that means, but there's going to be a lot of water, power, resources that we're going to be really relinquishing here if that permit is approved. So, and I don't know, maybe Kaylee can talk about what aid in consideration means. I don't know what that means.
Thank you. Any other citizen concerns? Hearing none. Item 15, any board concerns? Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to bring up this issue, but not looking to invite response or deliberation or anything along those lines, but I am very concerned about the Law Enforcement Center's maintenance fund, and I think the public needs to be aware. This is something that I think as we reevaluate, and we've been reevaluating the success of the project so far, the timeline, and the entities involved, I think taxpayers should know that they're being taxed $400,000 every year for a maintenance fund for this brand-new building. That, right now, can be into perpetuity to $8 million. And when we look at a building such as the one that we're in, that's over 100 years old, we don't have a dollar set aside for it, and it's valued at twice the value, approximately $120 to $140 million versus a $61 to $70 million building. That fund right now has $800,000 in it. And November 1st, it'll be $1 million. May of next year, it'll be $1.2 million, and it'll just continue to grow. We're taxing people right now for this maintenance fund. We're facing a $4.5 million shortfall next year in Woodbury County. And to continue to put that level of dollars, that many millions of dollars to maintain a brand-new building, I think would strike the taxpayers as beyond the pale. And so I think we need to look at that issue in the future, whether that's the city council, the board of supervisors, the authority, because I think, I'm not against the maintenance fund, but as of the end of this year, we're down $1.2 million in revenue. How much will be sitting? $1.2 million in a fund for a brand-new building that has all kinds of warranties and guarantees and so on. Doesn't seem like it's a very good stewardship of taxpayer dollars. I think it's something that needs to be reevaluated and rethought. So those are just some thoughts for the future and a concern. Thank you very much.
Any other board concerns?
Sad to report kayak day is postponed. Low water levels.
That's one of your.
my point.
What's that?
Exactly my point.
Well, at least it's not just our county, so it's not just our fault that the water levels are short. It's other county supervisors failed to have more rain too.
So then you'd be available to help me harvest? Is that what
No,
you're saying?
definitely not.
Okay.
So the 19th, I know I told you guys that I might not be able to phone in. I may have made a way so I can at least phone in on the 19th, but now I found out I'm traveling on the 26th as well for work. And that one is by air, so I probably won't. It just depends on when I land and when I get to where I need to be. And so plan to have me call in on the 19th and probably on the 26th as well.
Okay.
Oh, and then I did have one other concern. So Jeremy, plug your ears, or maybe sit down there for a second. I had an attorney contact me concerned about the FOIA request, and the attorney that we hired, apparently a lot of the conversations that have been FOIA'd or words that are FOIA'd are to that attorney. So I'm afraid there's a conflict of interest, and that should have probably been brought up by that attorney that was hired. But that's something that's now concerning to me because that attorney was recommended, and I think we had worked with them before, as the sheriff's department has, and to find out that a lot of those key words were on emails to that attorney. He probably should have recused himself from taking that job unless those are being submitted as planned. I don't know because I'm not involved in that process. I would say that we did have a process on the last FOIA request that was pretty large. It was 21 items, where the person that requested, was an attorney, Al Sturgeon, was just given permission to go through the emails and dialogue on his own. Now, that was a decision by PJ, the county attorney at the time. We have a different county attorney, so, and I don't know, and I don't remember the date, but I think it was 30 days from when that request was given, so that's probably close to now. So I don't know if everything's been done. I would kind of like some kind of update or report, because we did hire an attorney as the Board of Supervisors, and I guess I'd like to know that things were done.
Okay. Any other board concerns, Mr. Nelson?
I've been busy with the LEC stuff, so I apologize, but I've had a citizen that contacted me with the same regard, Keith. So, for what it's worth, I think we may want to do some due diligence on that going forward.
Any other board concerns?
I will be calling in next week as well. I won't be with Keith. I'll be on a military training. Thank you.
And my training is a lot, no, it's not, it's nothing like military training. Trust me, it's pretty
Thought you
laid
were gonna
back.
be like, my training is much more intensive and.
You know, the best thing about my training is I get snacks. So, no chips, but at least snacks.
Do you get chips?
They're MREs and they're terrible.
MREs, yeah. All right, hearing no other board concerns,